Good afternoon and happy Friday, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm Andy Schweiger here in Schweiger Vineyards. We're broadcasting from our barrel room today. I was really hoping we were going to have our assistant winemaker, Becca, on with me today. Unfortunately, we found out there's only one microphone in the AirPods, so we're going to get here and here again sometime soon, I promise. As we're doing this, please feel free to type any questions or comments either in the Facebook comments field or in the comments of Zoom if you're watching on that platform. And today we are going to discuss our 2015 dedication. It just arrived for you club members. It just arrived as part of your spring club shipment. And if you haven't already, open up a bottle, join us, and let's have some fun together. Some of us might be locked in, we might be sheltering in place. It doesn't mean we can't enjoy a little Friday glass of wine. So for those of you who aren't familiar with what dedication is, this is our proprietary Bordeaux blend. Every year, the varietal percentage changes. Becca and I work together to come up with the best representation of our terroir. The 2015 is 62% Cabernet, about 20% Merlot, 14% Cab Franc, and 4% Malbec. And we do this blending. The difference is when we're creating 100% Cabernet or 100% Merlot, our goal is to give the best expression of that varietal from that vintage. The fun thing about creating a blend is we're free to the shackles of varietal and more creating a love letter to terroir. So we adjust those blends and those percentages. We're actually not even shooting for numbers. As Becca and I are sitting working on the blends, it's more of a trial and error of what's working, what isn't. And when it's all said and done and we've decided what we liked, then we're gonna go ahead and put pencil to paper and decide what did our varietal composition wind up being. So go ahead, if you poured yourself a glass, pick it up and give it a smell. I would love your comments as we're tasting this. Descriptors are very personal. And when I say star anise, somebody might think black licorice, and they're somewhat different things, but different people have their own definitions. To me, real strong, dark berry, cherry, little cocoa powder on the nose. Kind of a very subtle toasted flaxseed, cumin. I mentioned star anise earlier. And just a light grace of French oak. Our goal here is never to let the oak dominate, rather to complement the wines. How about those of you at home who are trying? Paula today is moderating for us. So she's at home at mission control, and she is going to be able to relay any of your questions or comments to me as we're going. Becca's here in the barrel room with me, and I'm like, wait, I can't be drinking alone. She has to join along. When we're creating any of our wines, whether it be dedication or Cabernet, mouthfeel is equally important to me because you want something that's going to complement food, that's going to blend, that's going to have subtle nuances as well as dynamic expression. There's really a nice velvety sweetness to the entry, and it really crescendos into that mid palate with a lot of dark fruit, dark blackberry, dark chocolate. And the tannins really start to move forward as we get closer to the finish, and you have a nice balance of tannin, acidity, and lingering fruit, especially that blackberry and dark cherry.
So Andy, we have a question from Nick Matthews. How long do you keep the wine in the barrel?
Hey Nick, thank you for that question. Here at Schweiger, because of the tannin profile of our fruit, we are actually barrel aging just shy of 3 years, typically about 32 months. And our reasoning behind that, mountain fruit can be more aggressive in its tannin structure. On the plus side, we don't have to work as hard to extract the color and the flavor from the skins. The thing we have to be careful is not to over extract. By leaving the wine in barrel longer, we're not making it oakier or toastier, but giving those tannins time to gently soften and polymerize in the naturally aerative environment of the barrel. This is from the 2015 vintage, which was one of the more challenging vintage in recent memory, but very rewarding at the same time. Sometimes when we say challenging, people think that's a bad thing. Challenging as in it was a colder spring, a very cool summer, and we wound up having lots of shot berries. I discussed this a little bit on our Wednesday cast when we were discussing 2015 Cabernet. But for those of you who have not seen that one yet, we actually had so many shot berries on the clusters, we had to purchase a sorting table that year to make sure that we got everything out nice and clean. We've only had to use it, we used that table a little bit in 2016 and we haven't needed it since then, but it's always there should we have the need for it. But as a result, the 2015 vintage, our total production was only about 45% of normal. Dedication production varies. From this vintage, we only made 565 cases. So a pretty small production.
What are shot berries is the next question.
Oh, thank you. What are shot berries? Shot berries are, so grapes start out as petalless flowers. So right now we have bud break, and as those shoots grow longer, we will actually see the primordial clusters start to push out of the shoot. And as it's getting closer to, as the season progresses, typically early June, this year we're a little ahead of schedule, so I wouldn't be surprised if this happens late May, we have what's called flowering. And at that point, the cap pops off, revealing pistil and stamen. The grapes typically self-pollinate. Now the problem is, if we have too cold, too wet of weather, or too windy of weather, the pollen may not adhere. And you essentially get a stillbirth berry that grows to the side of maybe a little bit larger than a sesame seed, between a sesame seed and a BB size. These are very green, they're high in acid, they don't develop any sugar, and not only are they very sour, they're very bitter as well. So they're very undesirable to go into finished fermenting. Thought it'd be fun a little bit to discuss the history of dedication here at Schweiger Vineyards. When I started making wine here in '94, Dad, rightfully so, wanted to be very cautious with what we were doing and said, look, I don't know winemaking, I just know I grow great grapes. None of that Mickey Mouse blending you do at other wineries, just 100% Merlot, 100% Cabernet. And we did that for several years. And in fact, in 2000, one of our newer areas of vineyard, our gate block, was tasting so phenomenal early on in the fermenter, I decided for our first time to put that wine down to 100% new French oak. And as the wines were aging, we were evaluating it and said, hey, this would be amazing to bottle by itself. Maybe even call it a reserve. Well, reserve to me is a four-letter word. I've worked at many larger corporate wineries where the reserve was often made at the expense of their regular cuvées. And I never wanted to do anything that would detract from the quality of our Cabernet. So as we approached the blending of our 2000 Cabernet, I approached it with the thought of, okay, what if we kept out 200 cases worth of this? And when we decided, okay, we can do this without it negatively impacting our regular Cabernet, that was our first bottling of dedication. Moving forward, 2001 and 2002, we were unable to do that. We needed every last ounce of that gate block to create our Cabernet. So we got to thinking that, wow, we trademarked dedication. We haven't used the name in 2 years. We've got to do something with it. And at the same time, I had been itching to get back into blending. I had the privilege to cut my teeth at some amazing wineries like Joseph Phelps, known for their insignia, Chateau Saint Jean, known for their Cinq Cépages, as well as Cane with Cane 5 and Cane Cuvée. I missed the fun of blending. So Dad and I sat down, we talked over the logistics of it, and partnered with Spring Mountain Vineyards for Cabernet Franc and Paoletti Vineyards for Malbec. So we purchased fruit in 2003 as well as 2004 from them. And those were the first vintages of Dedication being a Bordeaux blend. At the same time in '03, we tea-budded some of our Merlot acreage over to Cabernet Franc and Malbec. So when we bottled 2005 Dedication, that was our first vintage to be 100% estate bottled. Any comments or questions coming in, Paula?
We have a question from Denise. Can you explain what you do at the sorting table?
What we do at the sorting table, Denise? That would actually be a fun, I should try and find a video and put it in the comments of this when we post it. The sorting tables, there's many different types of sorting tables. There's actually a machine now, it's a digital optical sorter that as the fruit is coming out of the stemmer, a camera is taking thousands of photos a second and evaluating whether or not the berries are acceptable, and it uses puffs of air to reject those berries. That machine retails, I think, for $350,000. That's a little bit out of our budget. What we used instead was a shaker table. So as the fruit falls out of the stemmer, it falls onto a table that is shaking very rapidly. And it has two motors that are mounted that shaking is actually a rapid oscillation. So even though the table is level, the fruit is just slowly vibrating across the table. When the fruit first falls onto that table, there's actually a slotted screen. So anything really tiny will actually fall through that screen and we discard that. Then we'll have 4 to 6 people standing on either side of the table, just looking at the fruit, and anything that's too small, too green, gets picked out and discarded.
Okay. Oh, I lost it.
Okay.
Sorry. When you create a blend, how can you tell if it's good by the unfermented juice?
Well, so when we create a blend, we're actually starting our blends because we're barrel aging for 32 to 34 months. We have time on our side. So we're actually right now working on our 2017 and 2018 blends, where we have time to see how that wine is evolving. The other thing is there is a learned skill to tasting baby wines and see how they're going to evolve over time. So it's real easy for somebody to come in and create a blend, but it's a skill to be able to forecast what that blend will be like when it comes time to bottle, when it comes time to release, and 5, 10, 20 years out from when you're actually blending. So we have to keep all those things in mind.
Is there a preferred temperature to serve Dedication?
I don't really have a preferred temperature for Dedication over any other Bordeaux-based blend, or I should say any Bordelais wine, whether it be Cabernet or Merlot or any of those other varietals. For me, I like it maybe half an hour out of cellar temperature. So pull it out of cellar temperature, let it rest at room temperature for about a half an hour, open it up, and let it continue to warm up as you enjoy it in the glass. Now, before I take any more questions, I want to pose a question to our club members and other people out there watching today. Dedication is what's classified as a left bank Bordeaux blend. That is Cabernet based. Those are wines that are grown on the more southwestern side of the river in the Bordeaux region. Right bank, more the north-northeast, is typically Merlot based. Left bank Cabernet based are usually made to be laid down for longer, being based on Cabernet. Right bank Merlot based is consumed a little bit earlier on. They have very different characteristics, and I've toyed with this for a long time. So my question I would pose to wine club members: how would you feel if Schweiger Vineyards, in addition to Dedication, were to someday make another wine similar to Dedication, but be more right bank in style, emphasizing more the Merlot and a little bit of the Cabernet Franc and Malbec, and Cabernet being a lesser player, maybe no more than 15 or 20%? So that's open for discussion as we're doing this today. Any other questions coming in, Paula?
None at the moment, but we'll try to get some here for you.
I've been busy talking, and so I'm going to take another sip and see how this is opened up and involved. Even softer, a little bit more open. I'm actually getting a little bit of a strawberry preserve now in the mouthfeel as well. So that's part of the fun, I think, of wine tasting, is seeing how the wine changes and evolves as it's opening up in the glass. And by no means is this question today an accurate polling of what we're doing, but this is just a discussion I've had in the back of my mind for a long time. I've mentioned it to my dad. He's like, no, one wine isn't enough. One blend is enough. But what can I say? I'm a little bit of ADHD, and sometimes I have my squirrel moments where I think, hey, it'd be fun. Let's do this. Let's try this. Always trying to come up with something new and interesting for our club members.
Okay, we got a comment. We trust your taste buds for blending rather than ours. Maybe you should check with Paula first. I like that one. We are generally cab fans, but we would certainly be interested in tasting a right bank. We think another Schweiger wine would be great. Also, we don't drink a lot of Merlot. Maybe it would get us out of our cab comfort zone.
You know, the funny thing is, if you remember that movie Sideways with the character who kept saying, I'm not drinking any more Merlot, a lot of people don't get the inside joke that throughout the movie, he is coveting and treasuring this one particular bottle. And at the end of the movie, he drinks that bottle of wine. That bottle of wine is a right bank Bordeaux blend. He was drinking an effing Merlot.
So I also posed the question to our the people who are joining us today about if anybody has done a tasting at that bar that you're standing at right now.
Oh yeah. For those of you who haven't visited us prior to 2011, this actually was our tasting room from 2000 up till 2011. We actually used to even have a computer down here in the 85% humidity and typically 58 degrees Fahrenheit. And we never turned it off because we were so afraid of it cooling down and getting humid. Now, this dedication, this vintage dedication, is also going to be sent out to our Magnum Club members starting week after next. So if this is something that you would enjoy aging and laying down as a Magnum for the years to come and are not yet a Magnum Club member, you can let us know. You can secure your Magnum of 2015 dedication if you email us at thefamily@schweigervineyards.com before Wednesday, April 1st. After that, availability may be harder to come by of the Magnums. Well, if we don't have any other comments or questions, I'm going to wrap up. I do want to let you know that we have 3 more episodes scheduled for next week. And next week, we're going to actually have some special guests. Some friends of mine, members of Straight No Chaser, have been doing their own series of online wine tastings, and we've teamed up. So next week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3 p.m. Pacific, look for the Schweiger Vineyards Facebook Live on our homepage on Facebook, and join us there. We have actually released what we're calling the SNC 6-pack. These are 6 wines that the guys from Straight No Chaser and I picked out. These are different from the wines that just came out to our wine club members. And there is a 20% discount built into this pack. And if you use the coupon code SNC 6-pack, you actually will receive $10 flat rate shipping on that item in particular. I saw a few more comments coming in, Paula.
We have another question. How do you know what percentage of grapes to put into the dedication each year?
What percentage of which varietal changes? And so what Becca and I are doing when we sit down is the first few rounds of tastings, we just look at all the wines we made from that vintage. So any given vintage, we might have 9 different Cabernets. We might have 3 Merlots. We might have 2 Cab Francs. We might only have 1 Malbec. And we look at the aroma, what is expressive of that varietal, and then we look at the overall mouthfeel. Okay, this Cabernet needs a little bit of softening component to round out the bitterness of it. We might have a very fruity Malbec to pump things up. We then start playing with the lots, but the lots themselves sometimes are co-ferments. If we're near the end of the day and we picked only 1 ton of Merlot and 6 ton of Cabernet, we will sometimes co-ferment that and have, okay, I forget even what numbers I said, but roughly an 80% Cabernet, 20% Merlot lot. For our own purpose, we still call that a Cabernet lot. But we keep track of all these percentages. So we start putting all these lots together, and we're not really pursuing a number. When we're all said and done, we will have decided, okay, we're gonna use 5% CS lot 1, 2% CS lot 2, 8% Malbec. And the Malbec lot actually might be 10% Cabernet. That's when we sit down and run all the math and decide, okay, here is our final percentages. Fortunately, in the age of computers, we don't have to put pencil to paper. We have a program that does that for us.
So Nick wants to know, speaking of blending, how did you come up with the family cuvee? And does the blend on that one change each year also?
Family cuvee. So sorry for laughing, but so I got to tell a backstory to a backstory. Dad loves Petite Sirah, and he often wondered, Petite Sirah, for those of you who have not had it as its own varietal before. Sidebar, sorry guys, quickly, I said Petite Sirah, which I meant, but you may have noticed that I said I never mentioned Petit Verdot. Petit Verdot is the 5th traditional Bordeaux varietal that you'll find in wines like these. However, in my experience at working at another Spring Mountain District winery, Mountain Petit Verdot is very green, very tart, and very bitter. And I've never cared for it. So when it came time for us to plant our own fruit, I intentionally chose not to do any Petit Verdot. So that's why there's no Petit Verdot. Okay, back to my other story, Petite Sirah. Petite Sirah has a classic mocha toffee, a very dark, inky color to it. Even a tobacco tar note to it. And Dad loves those wines, and he often wondered, okay, what would it be like if we grew Petite Sirah up in the mountains? So in the late 90s, he had purchased some. We had a small postage stamp sized vineyard area to plant a vineyard. So we have approximately 150 vines of Petite Sirah. And those first vintages I made as 100%. But something strange happened as we were fermenting that Petite Sirah. It essentially took all those classic components of Petite Sirah and turned the amplifier beyond 11. The resulting Petite Sirah during fermentation, we have the camera mounted. I'm laughing. It should be good, Becca. We have the camera mounted to our forklift forks, and the hydraulics just settled a little bit. So if you saw me shaking, it's not an earthquake. It's just our jury-rigged camera mount of forklift forks. That Petite Sirah fermentation was so intense, it actually kind of smelled like rotting cooked cabbage. And I did everything I could, thinking of microbiology of what was happening with the yeast, that they are nutrient deficient, threw everything I had at it, and it still was stinky. We bottled about 12 cases each year. It was such a small block. And it was a very, not dark coffee, but almost burnt dark roast coffee. And we were thinking, okay, maybe this will calm down after we bottle it. And so we bottled it. And we've had about 12 cases a year of Petite Sirah. Now you only have 12 cases. So when you have people come here to this very bar to taste the wine, are you going to open up one of 12 cases? You kind of had to have people buy it on faith. And because it was limited production, it was kind of pricey. And so we never really sold a lot of it. And fortunately we didn't, because that's one of my favorite things is if I ever have a guest who's over and they're big fans of wine, I'll say, okay, here, try something interesting. So we did that for about 3 or 4 years. And then finally I decided, you know what, maybe the problem with Petite Syrah is it's too much Petite Syrah. So that year, I think that was 2005 or 2006, I co-fermented the Petite Syrah and Cabernet. In fact, the resulting wine wound up only being, I think, 10% Petite Syrah. And all those problems went away. You know, we have all this science on our side, we have all this education on our side and all this experience. And sometimes it's just trying new things and see what works. By co-fermenting, by diluting those Petite Syrah characters out, we actually made a much more pleasant wine. So by this time, we already had dedication going. So I decided, hey, if dedication is Dr. Jekyll, let's incorporate this Petite Syrah and make a Mr. Hyde version of dedication. So when we're creating Family Cuvée, it's more of a, okay, let's be darker, let's be more brooding. Let's have a wine that's going to be more tannic and more aggressive. Whereas with dedication, we're pursuing more elegance and more layering. Any other questions or comments while I was going on, Paula?
The only question or comment that we got was from Glenn. Glenn says, this is really fun. We're sorry we won't see everyone on Sunday the 29th because we were really looking forward to the release celebration.
Well, Glenn, I hope you can make it when we do reschedule. This is not a cancellation, it's a postponement. We just don't know when we are postponing it to yet. We already felt bad because the October Wine Club release party, we wound up canceling because of fires up here at the time. So I guess, you know, they say it's not one thing, it's another. It's not fire, it's plague. Well, but we're gonna get through this. We're all gonna get through this together, and we're all gonna come together, and we're gonna have some amazing paella, some amazing conversation, and some amazing wines all together. So with that, be sure to check back next week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3 p.m. on Facebook Live, where we're going to be joined by members of Straight No Chaser. I am in the process of planning the upcoming tastings beyond next week, and I've got some other special guests joining us in the week to come. So until then, have a happy Friday. Stay inside, stay home, stay safe, stay healthy. Enjoy a glass of wine with your loved ones. Cheers.